This is Paris, the city the world calls romantic. Cafés with warm lights, cobblestone streets, perfume in department stores, lovers on bridges, the Eiffel Tower glittering like a promise. But Paris also has another face, one you can walk past without ever noticing. A Paris where people don't live in movie scenes. They live in crowded rooms, long commutes and quiet humiliation. A Paris where the postcard ends and survival begins. Because the most powerful thing about Paris isn't just its beauty, it's how easily that beauty can hide everything else. You can sit in front of a perfect bakery window while someone nearby is calculating whether they can afford dinner. You can take a photo of dreamy Paris while the people who clean that dream are already exhausted before sunrise. Tonight, we're stepping into the Paris that rarely makes it into your feed, not to destroy the romance, but to reveal what the romance costs and who pays for it. Because in Europe's most romantic city, the lie isn't that Paris is beautiful. The lie is that everyone gets to live inside that beauty. This documentary is presented for narrative and entertainment purposes only. It reflects social observations and human experiences, not absolute truths. Paris is sold to the world as a feeling, not just a place, an idea of elegance, culture, art and love. A city where the streets look cinematic, even on ordinary days, where history sits on every corner like it belongs to everyone. And yes, Paris can be everything people imagine, but Paris is also layered. There's the Paris visitors experience and the Paris people endure, the Paris of balconies and museums, and the Paris of cramped apartments, unstable work, and neighborhoods that tourists never hear mentioned unless something goes wrong. Because in a city built on image, poverty doesn't always look like chaos. It often looks like invisibility. It looks like the worker cleaning hotel rooms before guests wake up, the dishwasher in a restaurant near the Seine, the delivery rider crossing the city in the rain, the caretaker riding the first train from far outside the center, arriving before the lights turn on. They keep the romantic Paris functioning, yet many of them live far from it, priced out of the very city they serve. Tonight, we're not here to judge Paris. We're here to see the parts that don't get photographed, the parts that don't fit the myth, the parts that reveal a truth many cities share. When a place becomes a dream for the world, it can become unaffordable for the people who make that dream real. Before we continue, subscribe to Secret Journey for documentaries that reveal the hidden lives inside countries. And tell me, from which city and country are you watching this video? The Paris you don't stay in. Paris is a city of stages. There's the stage you visit, the cafés, the museums, the avenues, the glow of streetlights against old stone. Everything feels designed to be remembered. Even the air seems to carry a script. Slow down, fall in love, take a picture. But behind that stage is the backstage Paris, the part that makes the performance possible. And the first difference is distance. Tourists talk about Paris as if it's compact, walkable, endlessly charming. But for many workers, Paris is something else. A commute that starts before dawn, a train that's too full, a body that's tired before the shift even begins. Because the center of Paris is expensive, often painfully so. And when prices rise, people don't disappear. They move outward, further from the postcard, further from the lights, further from the places where Paris is marketed as a lifestyle. So an invisible map forms. The visible Paris is the one with monuments and cafes. The invisible Paris is the one with shared bedrooms, long rides, and a constant calculation. Can I keep living here? Many people live in apartments that would shock outsiders. Tiny rooms with barely enough space to breathe, buildings with thin walls, old plumbing, and rents that keep rising anyway. Some share their homes with strangers because privacy is a luxury. Others move constantly, chasing something slightly cheaper, slightly farther, slightly less stable. And then there's the quiet pressure. In Paris, you're surrounded by beauty that you can't fully access. You can work next to the Louvre and still not have time or energy to walk inside. You can serve people on terraces and still not afford to sit there. You can clean a hotel that costs more per night than you earn in a week. This isn't just economics, it becomes psychological. Because a city like Paris does something strange. It makes inequality feel normal by wrapping it in elegance. You're not supposed to talk about struggle in the most romantic city. You're supposed to keep the image intact so people stay quiet. They don't want to ruin the mood. They don't want to feel like the wrong kind of Parisian. They don't want to admit they are living in a city that feels like it belongs to others. And the city keeps moving beautifully. Morning pastries, fashion windows, clean streets in the center, tourists smiling, couples posing, music drifting out of a cafe. But if you follow the people who serve that scene, the story changes. Paris becomes less about romance and more about survival. Less about walking slowly and more about running on time. Less about art and more about rent. And that's the first crack in the romantic lie. Paris can be breathtaking and still be harsh. Paris can be elegant and still be unforgiving. Because when a city becomes a brand, the people who can't afford the brand are pushed into the shadows. In the next part, we're going to talk about the jobs that keep Paris shining and why so many people working those jobs feel trapped in a life the world never associates with Paris. The work that makes romance possible. Romantic Paris is not self-sustaining. It is maintained. Every clean hotel hallway, every polished restaurant floor, every perfectly arranged pastry window is the result of labor, often invisible labor. Labor done early, late, and quietly. Labor that is rarely part of the story tourists tell when they fly home. Because the myth of Paris is smooth, the work behind Paris is not. Many of the people who keep the city running are in jobs that don't come with applause. Housekeeping, cleaning, kitchen work, delivery, caregiving, construction, security, retail, transport. Jobs with physical strain and limited flexibility. Jobs that keep your hands busy and your back sore while the city around you sells leisure. And the contradiction is everywhere. A person can spend the day serving luxury and still feel poor. They can spend the day surrounded by European elegance and still go home to a life that feels tight, temporary, and constantly at risk. Because in Paris, being broke doesn't always look like unemployment. It looks like being employed and still struggling. It looks like choosing between groceries and a metro pass. It looks like postponing a doctor's visit because money is too tight this month. It looks like working 2 jobs and still feeling anxious every time the rent date gets close. And there's another layer, stability. Paris has a rhythm that depends on reliable workers, but many workers live with unreliable conditions. Short-term contracts, seasonal shifts, hours that change, bosses who can replace you quickly, a constant feeling that you have to be grateful just to keep your place. So people endure. They accept long commutes because moving closer is impossible. They accept crowded living spaces because privacy is too expensive. They accept exhaustion because rest feels like something for other people. And when they do get a day off, Paris doesn't feel like a playground. It feels like a museum they can't afford to touch. It feels like a city they're allowed to pass through but not fully enjoy. This is how the romantic lie works. It turns the city into a fantasy, then hires millions of people to maintain that fantasy, while many of them remain outside of it. And those workers don't just maintain buildings and services, they maintain silence. They learn not to complain too loudly, not to disrupt the atmosphere, not to look like mess in a city that sells perfection. Because in places built on tourism, image is a kind of currency, and if you threaten the image, you can become unwanted. So poverty in Paris often stays hidden behind uniforms, behind polite smiles, behind professionalism. You might meet someone who looks fine and never realize they're one missed paycheck away from crisis. And that's what makes this version of poverty so hard to see. It blends in. It moves quickly. It keeps its head down. It tries to be invisible in a city that rewards elegance. In the next part, we'll step into the spaces that don't match the postcard, where the city's romantic center feels far away, and where the cost of living turns ordinary life into constant stress. When home feels like a compromise, Paris teaches you the price of space. In the center, space is luxury. Outside the center, space becomes distance. And for many people, home is not a sanctuary, it's a compromise, a place you squeeze into, not a place you expand inside. Some apartments are so small they feel like storage units with a window. Others are shared in ways that erase privacy. Roommates you didn't choose, thin walls, limited kitchens, schedules that clash, noise that never fully stops. And even when the place is good, the cost can feel like a constant pressure on the chest. Because rent is not just a bill, it becomes a decision maker. It decides whether you can travel, whether you can rest, whether you can plan, whether you can breathe. And when you can't breathe financially, everything else becomes smaller. People start saying no. No to outings, no to dinner invitations, no to small pleasures that make life feel human. No to experiences that tourists believe are normal Paris. Slowly, the city becomes a place you work in, commute through, and recover from, rather than a place you live. And then there's the shame. In a city famous for style, people feel pressure to look like they're doing okay, to appear stable, to appear composed. And when you're struggling, that pressure can make you isolate. You don't want to admit you can't afford what others can. You don't want to feel like you failed in the dream city. You don't want to be the person who ruins the mood. So you keep quiet. You learn how to be tired politely, how to be broke quietly, how to keep your problems small enough that no one has to acknowledge them. And this is where the romantic lie becomes personal. Paris doesn't just market romance. It markets a life, strolls, cafés, beauty, ease. So when your real life is stress, you start feeling like the problem is you. Why can't I do it? Why does everyone else look fine? Why does this city feel like it's slipping away from me? But the truth is, many people are asking the same questions, silently. Because the cost of living isn't only financial, it becomes mental. It turns the future into uncertainty. It turns the present into calculation. It turns joy into something you have to schedule, justify, or postpone. And when enough people live like that, a city can look glamorous while quietly draining the lives that support it. That's how a romantic city can become emotionally cold for the people who can't afford the romance. In the next part, we'll talk about the invisible boundaries, how Paris separates people not only by money, but by access, movement, and belonging, creating two realities that rarely touch. The invisible borders of a beautiful city. Paris has borders you can't see. Not the city limits on a map, the social borders. The borders that decide who belongs in the center, who serves the center, and who is expected to stay out of the picture. In the most photographed parts of Paris, everything feels curated. Even ordinary life looks cinematic. But that curated feeling isn't accidental. It's the result of history, money, policy, and a global obsession with Paris as a brand. And brands have rules. A brand needs consistency. It needs cleanliness. It needs beauty. It needs the illusion that the dream is widely accessible, so the city becomes divided into visible and invisible spaces. The visible spaces are the ones you're meant to walk through slowly. The invisible spaces are the ones you're meant to pass through quickly or not at all. For many people, this division is experienced every day through movement. You can tell who belongs by how they move. Unhurried in the center, rushed on the margins. You can tell who has time by who sits. You can tell who has money by who looks relaxed. And what happens when you don't belong? You become careful. Careful where you sit, careful how long you stay, careful how you look, careful how you speak. Because visibility can come with judgment. In a city so obsessed with aesthetics, being visibly poor can feel like being socially loud, even if you're quiet. So many people learn to shrink their presence. They avoid attention, they avoid conflict, they avoid showing need, and that creates a strange paradox. Poverty becomes harder to see the more people try to hide it, which is why tourists can visit Paris and leave convinced that the city is simply elegant and functional, with only rare suffering. But that perception is shaped by what the city allows you to see. If you stay near monuments, you're inside the dream. If you follow the workers home, you enter another Paris, a Paris of long rides, of tired faces at bus stops, of apartments squeezed by costs, of communities built far from the center because the center is no longer for them. And this isn't unique to Paris. It's a pattern in many global cities. But in Paris, the contrast feels sharper because the myth is stronger. Paris is not just a city people visit, it's a city people worship, which means admitting its poverty feels like admitting the romance was incomplete. In the next part, we'll confront the deepest part of the lie, how the city's beauty can make hardship feel like personal failure, and how people slowly disappear, not from Paris entirely, but from the Paris the world recognizes. When the dream pushes you out, there's a quiet way people lose Paris, not through eviction headlines, not through dramatic moments, through gradual retreat. They stop going to the center. They stop meeting friends in cafés. They stop treating Paris like a city of possibility. And the reason isn't always a single tragedy. It's pressure over time. Rent that rises faster than pay. Bills that feel heavier each year. Work that becomes more demanding. Commutes that steal hours from your life, a sense that you're always catching up and never arriving. So people adjust. They move farther out, temporarily. Then farther, then they leave completely quietly. And when they leave, it often doesn't feel like a simple relocation. It feels like something breaking inside. Because Paris is not only a place, its identity, its status, its story. Leaving can feel like failing the myth. And even for those who stay, there's a kind of exile that happens internally. They live in Paris, but not inside the Paris people mean when they say Paris. They live near it, they work for it, they support it, but they don't belong to the fantasy. And that's how the romantic lie becomes the most cruel. It convinces struggling people that they are the exception, when in reality, they are part of the engine. Paris is a dream economy. It profits from desire, from tourism, from luxury, from the global hunger for beauty. But dream economies have a hidden truth. They require invisible lives, lives that clean, cook, repair, deliver, care, maintain, and serve. Lives that must remain quiet so the dream stays smooth. And the city, intentionally or not, becomes skilled at preserving the dream. It doesn't always erase poverty. It contains it, moves it outward, softens it behind politeness, hides it behind fast movement and beautiful surfaces. So Paris remains romantic to the world, but the people living broke inside it learn something uncomfortable. You can live in one of the most beautiful cities on earth and still feel like you're not allowed to exist loudly. In the ending, we're going to ask the question that lingers behind every postcard. If a place can look this perfect, how much is happening just out of sight? And what does it mean when a city's romance depends on someone else's exhaustion? Paris will always be Paris. It will keep glowing in films, keep selling romance in photos, keep inspiring people who have never walked its streets to believe in a certain kind of life. And in many ways, that romance is real. But so is the other Paris. The Paris of long commutes, crowded rooms, unstable work, quiet shame, and constant calculation. The Paris that doesn't fit the myth, so it gets pushed to the edges of the story. This isn't a documentary about hating a city, it's about seeing a city clearly. Because when beauty becomes a brand, suffering doesn't disappear. It just becomes easier to ignore. And when poverty becomes invisible, it becomes easier to dismiss. Easier to assume it isn't urgent. Easier to pretend the dream is for everyone. But if you look closely, you'll see the truth. Paris doesn't only run on romance, it runs on labor, on endurance, on people who keep the city perfect, while living lives that are anything but. If you made it to the end, subscribe to Secret Journey for more documentaries that reveal the hidden lives inside countries. And tell me, from which city and country are you watching this video? Because the next romantic lie might not be far from where you live.